Okay, welcome to the second hour of Navy at Military Studies 100. We have Commander MacLean talked about ships the first hour, and this hour we're going
to talk more about ships.
More about ships. Please ask questions, raise your hand for attention, and he will ask questions. Previously, he had talked about life on a ship and was talking about how he communicates with his wife and during his career. So why don't you go ahead and continue with that?
Sure. The question was, when I was on submarines, did we have internet access? The answer is no. What we had was these things called familygrams. And my wife would get 8 of them for a 6-month deployment. So 8 letters she could write to me. She was allowed 50 words. So she would write her 50-word letter to me, and she would bring it down to the submarine squadron. She would give it to the person that was at the front desk. There usually be a yeoman. And 2 people at the squadron would read the letter to make sure that there was nothing in there that would distress me. If it would distress me, they would take it out of the letter. So then they would send it via a radio message to the ship. And then when the ship went to periscope depth and we put our antenna up, we would copy all the radio messages, including familygrams. We would submerge again. And then the radioman would type out my letter from my wife. So he's reading my letter from my wife. And then all the letters would go to the executive officer of the ship, and he would read the letter. And then after those 4 people have read the letter, they may decide to give me the letter. And that's because they don't want people on submarines to be upset about anything. There's nothing we can do about it. The ship's not going to surface, and they're going to have some helicopter come and pick me up. So the letters that were distressing typically would be held until there was something that somebody could do that I could actually do something for. So no, we didn't have internet access. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit more about ships. If I can have the ships up here. Okay, so the Navy has 2 types of ships. 2 categories. Combatant ships, those are the ones you guys are used to seeing on the news all the time, aircraft carriers, cruisers, and that. And then auxiliary ships that do a very important role to the Navy. In fact, the Navy couldn't do anything without these guys. We further classify them as combatant ships as warships or other combatants. Warships include aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and submarines. Those are the ones we just talked about. But there are others, like mine warfare and amphibious ships. Aircraft carriers. The CVs are multi-purpose carriers, and the CVNs are multi-purpose carriers, but they're nuclear-powered. Okay, so we have all these CVNs now. Okay, they're nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. Anybody in here play football? What do you play?
Guard.
A guard. Do you like to run from one end of the football field to the other?
I don't know.
You don't like to do that. Okay. Well, if you were on an aircraft carrier, to run from one end of the field to the other, you would have to do it over 3 times.
Wow.
It's over 3 football fields long to kind of give you an idea of how big they are. It's also, from the bottom to the top, taller than a 17-story building. Because from here down, it goes way down another 8 decks. And in here, it goes up a whole bunch. Carriers can launch attack planes, recover them, and retire before the enemy spots it. Carriers are at the center of the battle group. There's about 80 planes, give or take, on an aircraft carrier when it deploys. That's called the air wing. All these other ships are along with the aircraft carrier. Because of their design, they have a unique mission that they're going to perform for the battle group around this aircraft carrier. But those 80 aircraft, that's the purpose of the aircraft carrier. The ship's purpose is to put those planes wherever the president needs them, anytime he needs them. That's what the purpose is.
The aircraft carrier. These huge floating airports carry all kinds of jet aircraft and helicopters. It takes 5,000 sailors to keep this busy ship doing its job, launching and landing aircraft from the flight deck.
Well, with landing on an aircraft carrier, if you could picture putting a little postage stamp in the middle of a room, turning out all the lights, taking a running leap and trying to catch it with your tongue, that's about what it's like. It's not that difficult. We get a lot of training and practice in doing it, but essentially each airplane that's on the aircraft carrier has a big hook that drops down off the back end. and there's 4 wires that are stretched across the deck. So we'll come and fly the airplane, and so that when we hit the wheels onto the aircraft carrier, the hook is catching a wire, and that actually slows our airplane down from about 150 miles an hour down to 0.
They mentioned 5,000 sailors on an aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier is a floating city. It's about 3 times the number of students you have here today. So if you can picture all the students here, they're all on that one ship. There's 7-Elevens, there's churches, there's restaurants, there's hospital, there's places where you sleep, places where you eat, there's maintenance facilities. Everything is on there. There's a post office. There's even a TV studio with 4 channels. Okay. 97,000 tons of diplomacy. That's what the Navy likes to call those aircraft carriers. It's 14 acres of freedom. 7 acres of flight deck and 7 acres of the hangar deck. So it's 14 acres of actual space for those aircraft. They have a whole bunch of defensive systems, including the aircraft. 20mm phalanx close-in weapons system, or CWIS. That CWIS, it just throws up a wall of lead. If there's a missile coming in towards the ship, that thing is a Gatling gun, and it shoots thousands of bullets up into the air. And the idea is not to try to shoot the missile down. It's to put up enough bullets in the air that the missile can't help but run into them. And that's how they get rid of the missile. The angled flight deck is used to launch and recover aircraft simultaneously. So what we can do is we can land aircraft on this flight deck while at the same time we're launching them off the one going off the end of the ship. It's pretty amazing the choreography that goes on in an aircraft carrier to get those planes in and out. Hydraulic elevators lift the planes from the hangar bay, which is down below here, up to the flight deck. Those are pretty big. These are 2 aircraft being lifted by the elevator. There are 4 elevators on an aircraft carrier. We have a series of repair shops, parts and munitions, equipment to fuel. You'll see a video on fueling here in a little bit. They're massive. They can go greater than 30 knots. Now, a knot is a little bit faster than a little bit farther than a mile. But you don't say knots per hour or knots per mile. You just say knots. So instead of saying, for example, here it says 30 plus knots, instead of saying 30 miles per hour, you just say 30 plus knots, meaning it can go at least that fast. The Navy likes to think that the President says, where are the carriers as soon as anything goes wrong in the world? Okay? They support and operate aircraft that can carry out attacks on air, surface, subsurface, and shore targets that threaten the free use of the seas, because that's what the Navy's out there to do, is to make sure that the seas are available to us and our allies. We keep the sea lanes open. Has anybody heard about the pirates that have been going on off the coast of Africa? You've been hearing about it, right?
Yeah, the Somali pirates.
Right. They keep taking these ships, right? So that the navies of the world are trying to solve that problem by having more and more Navy ships over there to keep the sea lanes open. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't have your shoes, right? Your tennis shoes are made someplace else, likely. Your clothes are made someplace else. Your laptops, your phones. That all arrives by ship. So we got to keep the sea lanes open. We can also go and do sustained operations in support of other forces. Like, for example, Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay, the Navy has had aircraft carriers over there the whole time. And what they're doing is that's an airport. It's an airport where they can take off and have those jets take off, and they can be up above the battlefield. And if our troops need help, they can radio and say, hey, I need you to come down here and hit this target. They can go down, they can hit the target. Aircraft carriers do deploy worldwide. The areas that I've been, when I was on, I did 2 tours on an aircraft carrier. I went down to Australia, Tasmania, went over to Singapore, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, all over the Pacific, all over the Indian Ocean. So you go everywhere. And since they're nuclear powered, they don't have to refuel for about 25 years. So it's not bad. How would you like to have a car that you didn't have to go to the gas station but once every 25 years? That'd be pretty slick, wouldn't it? Okay, true or false? The two types of Navy ships are combatant and auxiliary. Who's got an answer? True. What designation is used for a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier?
CVN.
CVN. There you go. Okay, cruisers. They're the primary surface warfare platform that the Navy has. They're really fast. They go with the carrier battle group. Well, if the carrier goes in excess of 30 knots, you want the cruiser to be able to go that fast too. And they act as, they're like the bodyguard for the fleet. Okay, for that battle group. They're really well prepared to go to combat. They have a lot of equipment on them. The Ticonderoga class, the CG-47 class. This is the Philippine Sea. Okay, Tomahawk cruise missiles, 2 5-inch gun mounts, dual Sea Whiz, which means they have one on either side of the ship. So if a missile is fired at them from either side of the ship, they can fire and protect themselves. It's about 2 football fields long. About 10,000 tons fully loaded. Goes in excess of what it says here, 34.5 miles per hour. That's pretty fast. Faster than I can run. And it's got a crew of 364. That's a lot. I'll give you a couple of ship terms real quick, just as a review. Last hour we talked about this part right here being the bow of the ship, the front end of the ship. We talked about the part way in the back here as being the stern of the ship. And right along here at the water's edge is the waterline. Using the Aegis system, it can fire over 200 miles away that missile. So let's take a look at a video of that. Obviously, that's Tomahawk. Okay, in our modern Navy, they pretty much perform primarily in a battle force role. Okay, pretty much in a battle force role, although they can go on their own. Air-to-air warfare, that's what the Navy calls AAW. They can do anti-submarine warfare. They can also go against other ships, anti-surface warfare. They can go as an expeditionary strike force. Again, they're going to project power ashore with their weapons systems. They can support amphibious forces. They can do reconnaissance, and at times they can be the flagship for a force that they're in. The Ticonderoga class ship is what kind of a ship? Raise your hands. Yes?
A cruiser.
A cruiser. Let's see if that's correct. You are correct. Destroyers. Anybody ever hear of John F. Kennedy? What kind of a vessel, naval vessel, did he serve on? PT boat. Okay, PT boat. They came up with the destroyers, to combat these. They're really fast. Okay? They're multi-purpose, but they're fast with a variety of armament, but lightly armored. Lightly armored means that they don't have a lot of protection from incoming things coming at them. Okay? They're more about going out and projecting their power onto somebody, the enemy, than they are protecting themselves. Their real advantage is speed and maneuverability. Both types of destroyer and support carrier battle groups. surface action groups, amphibious support groups, and replenishment groups. So typically there'll be one or two that'll go with a carrier battle group. It's still a pretty good sized ship. Undersea, air-to-air, and air-to-surface warfare capable, and the largest group of workhorses for the Navy. So I say there'll be a couple of them with the battle group. Okay. This one here, as you can see, this stripe right here. Okay. What they're doing is they're testing their maneuverability. They're putting the ship through its stresses to see how well it reacts and how well the crew has secured everything. Because remember, on a Navy ship, it's not like this where it's always flat. A lot of times you're leaning over one way or the other way. Okay? Or, even worse is you're leaning over one way and the bow's coming up. And then you're leaning over the other way and the stern's coming up. So they go through these maneuvers to check and see how things are tied down. You don't want things rolling around on the ship. There's a Spruance-class destroyer. First commissioned in 1975. It's gas turbine propulsion. Okay. Nuclear-powered ships, you need at least a day and a half to start up the reactor to be able to go someplace. So, for example, if the reactor's shut down and you want an aircraft carrier to go someplace, you better plan on at least probably about a day or two before you're going to go. These things, if you want to go, you turn in, you walk in, you turn in the key, and 5 minutes later, you're underway. It's almost as fast as getting in a car. That's what the gas turbine does for you. It does have helicopters, and it does have 5-inch guns and missiles. Okay, the Arleigh Burke class is the most powerful surface combatant. It's got the Aegis combat system. So it integrates ship sensors and weapons. It tracks far distant aircraft movement, and it's got 56 Tomahawk cruise missiles. So this one's got a lot of advanced technology on it to really help it go out there and find the enemy and track the enemy and help the battle group target the enemy. About 9,000 tons. And they've got 4 gas turbines. And controlled pitch propellers, that means like on most ships, the propeller's just that thing in the back. Let me see if we've got one that survived. So the propeller back here, this is a fixed propeller. It's built, and it doesn't move other than it spins, but there's no moving parts on it. Controlled pitch means that you can actually control the fins of that propeller to get more speed out of it. Okay, how about a guided missile destroyer? What would we call that? A, B, C, or D? It's multiple guess. A DDG. Okay, the G is on the back there for guided missile. Frigates. Open ocean escort and patrol. Okay, they're slower. They have a single propeller, so they're not all that maneuverable. They have less armament, but they do have a shallow draft, which is kind of nice. That means what can they do as far as the shore goes? They can get in much closer, can't they? Okay. Frigates, they all carry a little bit different armament. It depends on what that particular ship, one, it depends on when it was designed. Two, it depends on what it was designed to do. Each ship is designed a little differently. For example, cars. I bet if you go on that parking lot right now, you'll find a whole bunch of different cars out there, and they're all designed a little bit differently. There's pickup trucks out there. There's little sports cars. There's little fuel-efficient cars out there. There's muscle cars out there. Okay? Oliver Hazard Perry class frigates carry guns, missiles, and the phalanx system, and they carry Mark 32 triple torpedo tubes, and then some 50 caliber machine guns. So they've got a fair amount of firepower on them. Frigates protect shipping interests from amphibious forces, supply groups, and merchant convoys. So they're fast, they can go out, they can attack the other enemy really quickly. Could you just open that up and just push stop or end? They're also used in anti-submarine warfare and coastal defenses.
Confused. Oh, slow talk. No. No.
All right, guided missile frigates have anti-air capabilities and are tough and durable. What do they mean by tough and durable?
Last in combat.
Hmm?
They're able to last.
They're able to last in combat, right? They can take an awful lot and they can keep on going. Okay. They lack multi-mission capabilities and are being phased out with a new destroyer. And they were designed for a specific purpose. Well, once that purpose is done, what do you do with it? It would be kind of like having a Volkswagen and you're a contractor. Where do you put the lumber? So that's kind of what they're doing with the destroyer. They're saying, well, we need it to be able to do more than one thing. So the Oliver Hazard Perry-class ship is what kind of a ship? Sea frigate? Correct. Submarines. In the 1950s, nuclear-powered submarines began to replace diesel-powered submarines. I'll send out a submarine here now for you. This is one of the first submarines, first nuclear-powered submarines. Okay, they stay submerged for a long time, and they're very hard to find. Very, very hard to find. The idea is a submarine goes out, leaves port, and it submerges. Now the enemy doesn't know where it is. That's the whole idea. So the submarine can operate and go places that the surface ships can't go because the enemy doesn't know where you are, unless they can hear you. Okay? There's two types. Actually, there's three types now. SSNs are fast attack. Go find the enemy and sink them. That's what a fast attack does. They're very fast. They're very quiet. And their job is to go and attack the enemy. They'll go with a battle group, like a carrier battle group. There'll be a couple submarines with a battle group. A lot of them will operate independently. Some of them will do operations with SEALs, where they'll take the SEALs wherever they need to go. And then they'll wait for them, and the SEALs will come back to them, and they'll go back to their home port. So that's what a fast attack does. SSBNs, those are ballistic missile submarines. We have Trident missile system. They carry 24 Trident missiles. The missile tubes are open. You'll see in a video here, those missiles are big. They're really big. 4 stories big. Okay? They're really big. This doesn't really do justice to see how big this thing is. It's massive. Okay? And then the other one is the SSGN. Those are Ohio-class submarines, a couple of them, that the Navy has gone and converted it. It used to be a fleet ballistic missile submarine. Now what it's done, and you'll see it in just a minute, it's added some nuances to it, so it's got a different mission. It repurposed it.
The Navy is also under the seas, using 2 kinds of submarines to silently patrol the oceans of the world. There's attack submarines that hunt for ships and other submarines. There's also missile submarines called boomers that keep other countries from attacking the U.S.
Well, submarines are very, very important to the Navy because we're like the boogeyman. We can sneak up on you and scare you without you even knowing it. What we do is we protect what we believe in. We protect America's waters. We protect the United States as a whole. It's like having a bicycle and riding around your own house, protecting what you believe in, what you feel good about.
We're the boogeyman. Okay. So this is an attack submarine, the Norfolk. The mission of the nuclear attack submarine is to locate and destroy enemy ships and submarines. And then there's a lot of other things they do. They gather intelligence. They do other rescue and recon missions. And they're the primary defense against enemy submarine attack. So they're very good at knowing that the enemy is out there and where their submarines are. So they'll just make sure they track those submarines and those surface ships. Nuclear power turned the submersible surface ship into a true submarine. And what they mean by that is, remember, before nuclear power, when the submarine would go out, it was diesel operated. What does a diesel need to operate? It needs air. So when they would submerge, they had to shut the diesel down and they would operate on batteries. Well, that battery could only operate so long, and they had to go back up to the surface again. Nuclear power means once you submerge, you can stay underwater for 3 months. Really, the only thing that really limits the submarine at this point is the food. How much food can you carry for the crew? Because everything else you can create. You can create oxygen, you can create water, all that stuff happens. But it's the food that really limits them. Okay, today's submarines are even more self-sustaining. Okay, air revitalization equipment changing the air. What they mean by that is the submarine takes the ocean, converts that seawater into fresh water, takes the fresh water and removes the oxygen and hydrogen, gets rid of the hydrogen overboard, and we use the oxygen from the seawater to breathe. That's how the crew breathes. The idea is to be technically better, technologically more astute than the enemy. That's the whole idea. To be quieter, to be faster, to have better sensors, to be able to maneuver better than the enemy can. There's a lot of developing countries that have submarines. China has submarines. A lot of countries have submarines. The idea is to make sure that you've got enough submarines to track them all, so you know where they are. Seawolf-class went through initial trials in 1996.
The most sophisticated U.S. attack submarine is the Seawolf, launched in 1996. It is the latest in a long line of nuclear-powered attack submarines. The Seawolf has been controversial, if for no other reason than its high price tag, over $3 billion per submarine. Critics have charged that Seawolf is merely a last gasp of the Cold War, a weapon inappropriate to the new dynamics of world politics. But many of the features built into the Seawolf make it a very versatile platform, regardless of the constant changes in international security.
So a Seawolf-class submarine is just a little longer than your football field. It displaces about 9,000 tons, and it'll go at least 28 miles per hour. It's got Tomahawk missiles, Mark 48 torpedoes, which are very advanced torpedoes, and it can also use mines. It's the most advanced we have. The Virginia class is even longer, 377 feet, so about a football field plus another 25 yards.
How many people in each sub?
Probably somewhere under 150, maybe 120, 130 total. Not very many.
Is it male and female?
It is. Submarines are now male and female on a select group of submarines. We're starting in the Navy, starting to phase females in through two paths. One, the nuclear power path, because in order to be an officer on a sub, you either have to be the supply officer, where there's one, or you have to be a nuclear power officer. Be a nuclear power officer, so the females go into nuclear power, and the officers are currently serving on 8 submarines. Once we get used to having the women on the ships and we figure out all the logistics of that, because remember, the ships were originally designed to only have men. So the restroom facilities on the ships were designed differently. They were designed for a whole group of men to use the restroom rather than having somebody have privacy. So it is, and the berthing compartments, for example, on a submarine where you sleep, it's designed for a bunch of men to be there, not to have women there. They're going to get the same arrangement, but you can't sleep 30 people in a room if you have females there. You have to divide them out. Okay, here's a person right down here in this white. So you can kind of get a feel for the scale of a submarine now. So you see that guy down there in the white suit. So the attack submarines, called the Virginia class, fully support a new strategic concept. Okay, so they're going to do a lot of operations with submarines. What is the name of the Navy's first nuclear submarine?
USS Nautilus.
The USS Nautilus. In what decade did nuclear-powered submarines begin to replace diesel-powered? 1950s. Fleet ballistic missile submarines. Do you guys ever fall into ranks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
These guys are in ranks on this fleet ballistic missile submarine. There's 6 squads deep. So you can kind of get an idea just how big that thing is.
One of them split.
If one of them slipped, he'd get wet. They are nuclear powered, and they do have long-range strategic missiles. Okay? Strategic deterrence is what they are designed to do. What is strategic deterrence? It says to an enemy, we've got these really, really big missiles on this really, really quiet and hard-to-find submarine, and it's someplace in the ocean, which that means 71% of the Earth. It's someplace out there. If you attack us, we'll call them up and they will attack you. That's strategic deterrence. It makes you think twice. Maybe I don't want to attack them. That's what the idea of those are. Okay? A single boomer, as the Navy calls them, could deliver several nuclear payloads on an enemy. Even if everything else was destroyed, we can still do that. So an Ohio-class submarine is 560 feet, almost 2 football fields, with a beam of 42 feet. That's 42 feet wide. Almost 19,000 tons submerged. It's got torpedo tubes and the fleet ballistic missile submarines, or missiles. Okay? The Trident-capable ballistic missile submarine is the C part of our nuclear triad. Trident C4 was the original missile on them. They're currently being converted over to the D5, which is a larger missile.
How far do they go?
Thousands of miles.
Intercontinental.
They're intercontinental. They can strike anywhere.
How far below the surface do you shoot those things?
I couldn't say. But they
Tens of feet.
they can shoot. They are submerged. The submarine is submerged when they fire. They're not surface. They can fire while on the surface, but they're submerged when they fire. And I believe there's a video in here where you're going to see that. Okay? The SSGNs have 154 Tomahawk missiles that took the place of those Trident missiles. Then they also put in some things for the SEALs so that they can go on operations with Navy SEALs. Okay? Carrying Trident missiles, Ohio-class submarines have what designation? The ship's designation. B? SSBN. You are correct. The New Virginia-class submarines have what designation? That's a fast attack. A. Okay, other combatants. Okay, mine warfare ships. Mines are all over the world right now. They're deployed in the ocean right now. Different countries use the mines for different ways of protecting themselves and manipulating the sea lanes. Okay? The mine warfare ships are designed to go out there and find those mines, detect them, and neutralize them, either by blowing them up or by disabling them in some other way. There's a bunch of different ways that they can do that. Sonar and video find the mine wherever it's moored, and then remote control detonating devices to destroy the mines. Okay? They're smaller ships. They don't have a lot of armor. They don't have a lot of offensive weapons. They're really designed to go out and find the mine. Go find it and neutralize it so other ships don't get hit by them. Okay? Reinforced fiberglass hull for mine sweeping in coastal waters. That's because a lot of mines are what? They're attracted to what? Metal. So they make them out of fiberglass so that the mine isn't attracted to it. Okay? There are a bunch of different minesweepers. True or false? The mine's countermeasure ship can find and destroy mines if they are moored to, but not if they are on the seafloor.
False.
It's false? You are correct. Amphibious warfare. It's an attack by naval forces and combat troops launched from the sea. Amphibious ships transport the troops and their weapons and supplies to the hostile shores. So, for example, remember during the invasion of Normandy, the ships would come in and they dropped the front end, and then the army would run out and try to get to the beach. Okay, that was an amphibious assault. But this is what they're doing today. So first thing that happens is the shore gets softened up. The area they're going to go gets softened up. And the way it gets softened up is they bombard. Okay? And then the amphibious ships bring in ground forces while landing craft and helicopters move those forces to the shore with their equipment.
Because these amphibious ships operate so close to the shore, they're nicknamed gators. These ships carry thousands of Marines and their equipment from ship to shore in jets and helicopters, boats that fly over the water, and armored vehicles that swim.
So an alligator is an amphibian, which means we can go through the sea and on land. And with the equipment that we carry, we can do the same thing. What we're tasked to do is go in close to land, as close as we can, to make it a lot easier to put our Marines and their equipment on the beach.
The ships hold these deployable boats?
Correct. There are a bunch of different amphibious ships, but what they've got is they've got these deployable boats, deployable landing craft, and depending on the design of the ship, they've got a dock in the back that'll actually open up, and they'll go out the back end of the ship, these little deployable boats. I'll send this around for you to see. The other thing they said was they use helicopters. There's various kinds of helicopters that these ships use to get the forces, about 2,000 Marines, ashore so that they can go do their job. So the sailors on those ships will operate the equipment to get them ashore. And then once they're ashore, they'll do their mission. Okay, amphibious command ships. You can tell this is a command ship because there's all these antennas. Okay? It's command and control for fleet operations. It's kind of like, well, if you're on the other side of the world, it'd be nice to have the boss somewhere in the neighborhood, wouldn't it? So that's what this is. This is the boss. This is his ship. This is so they can kind of control everything. They've got wonderful electronic equipment in here, all kinds of stuff so that he can really effectively communicate back to the United States and with the battle groups. Okay? The Mount Whitney is in Italy. 52 officers and 790 enlisted people. It's a lot for a crew for a command ship. Okay, amphibious assault ship. I think I'm sending around is that number 1 there? Look on the side of the island there. It says number 1 on it. The gray stuff sticking up out of the top. Turn it around.
Yes, it does.
There we go. And this is number 3, okay? It's embarks, deploy, and land a Marine battalion by helicopter, landing craft, and amphibious vehicles. So you can see the back right here, the ramp. Inside this docking area in here are all those vehicles you saw going ashore. And then in addition to that, all these helicopters are launched and they're landing all the Marines at the same time. Now what they're talking about here is these 5-inch guns. They can provide some support for the Marines as they're going ashore. Let's say, for example, they need to bombard someplace. The enemy's got some kind of a gun emplacement and they're trying to protect the Marines as they're going ashore. They do have some 5-inch guns on here to help to protect them. Okay. The LCD is designed to embark, transport, and land 2,000 troops and their equipment by means of helicopters. So you can see all these helicopters out here. Okay. It doesn't have an angled deck because they're just taking off and landing helicopters. Okay. Helicopters are used for vertical envelopment. So the helicopters go up. They deliver what they need to deliver, and then they come back. Placing troops and supplies on any position accessible by air. That's key here, because what it allows you to do, you get to choose where you get to the enemy. during the landing at Normandy, what did we get to choose? Nothing. We got the beach. Okay, we're going to go to Gold Beach. And that was it. And the enemy got to keep all their defenses just the way they want it. With these helicopters now, you don't have to land at Gold Beach. You can go in and figure out, well, why don't we land over here? The enemy isn't over here. And then we can go and attack them from a different angle. So that's what this vertical envelopment does for you. It's a big ship. Almost 3 football fields. 40,000 tons, so about half of an aircraft carrier. But it does have a pretty good sized crew, 1,100 people.
Aircraft carrier has 6,000 people.
With the air wings on board, they'll have 6,000 to 6,500.
Men or women?
Both.
Aircraft carrier has both.
Aircraft carriers, all surface ships have both. Submarines are the last ships types to be converted over to carry women as well. What is the designation given to an amphibious assault ship designated to land troops and equipment primarily using transport helicopters? You think C? D. It's B. All right. So now we're starting to convert over to a newer type of ship. You can see it. Look at this one coming in right in the back here. Okay, so it's pulling in here, and we've got the helicopters here. This has the LPD, has the same capability as the others, but it's more modernized. There's a person sitting right, there's a person here, there's a person walking right here, so you can kind of get an idea of the size of the ship. Okay. Same kind of idea, except this one doesn't have this big, giant landing area for all of the helicopters. Much smaller landing area, and then it's still got the dock in the back, so it's just designed to really move more things on the water than by air. Remember that the 1, 2, and 3 that you had there that's going around? That's designed to get a whole bunch of troops over there on the helicopters really fast. This is getting a lot of equipment over there really fast. Oak Hill, 2 football fields, 84 feet wide, so it is really wide. 419 officers and men. And then there's a Marine attachment of 402. So there's about 400 Marines that we can get. Now the surge, when they say surge, that means we can get another 100 Marines on there if we need to. Okay, landing craft, air cushioned, LCAC. Has anybody heard of those? If you go down to California, drive down the coast over by Camp Pendleton, you'll see these quite often during the week coming into the shore right by Camp Pendleton. They do a lot of maneuvers there. It travels on air. It can drive that equipment right up onto the beach. That's what's so neat about it. It leaves the ship, it can drive that truck right up onto the beach. "40 knots is fast. That's greater than 40 miles per hour. So it's moving pretty quick. What is the primary load of an amphibious transport dock? Marines and their equipment. See, the Navy gets the Marines where they need to go. Okay? An air-cushioned landing craft transporting troops and equipment can travel over the waves at approximately how many knots? 40. You guys think 40? Let's see. You are correct. Okay, there's a couple auxiliary ships. Okay? Auxiliary ships are really, they're like the logistics that every ship needs. Because all these ships still need, especially the non-nuclear powered ones, they still need fuel, don't they? They need gas. And what else do they need? Here in just a little while. Yeah, food, right? You guys are going to be eating lunch pretty soon? They need food. An aircraft carrier has almost, 6,000 people on it. We've got to get the food out to that aircraft carrier. It doesn't go into the supermarket every couple of days. So there's constantly these supply ships bringing out food for these 5,000, 6,000 people. Okay. First letter is auxiliary. Okay. Replenishment or an unrep. This is an unrep. So here's a supply ship. It's bringing food across on these cables, and it's delivering fuel. An aircraft carrier will take on 1 million gallons of gas in a morning. Yeah.
How do they get the cables across?
They shoot a rifle, and a little string goes across to the other ship. They grab the string, and then they pull it back, and there's a rope attached to the string. And then at the other end of the rope are these. And they run these cables across. They hook them up, and then they send these things across.
I mean, do they do that? Is it take 10 hours or 20 hours or 2 days or how long these guys hooked up?
It depends on how much you're taking on, but they can be hooked up for 8-10 hours. And you're just going a set speed. You're going, typically it's 12 knots. You're going 12 knots and you're going through the water. It's a very difficult maneuver because these two ships, if they get too close together, they get a Venturi effect, they call it. It'll suck the two ships together and you get a collision. So you have your master helmsman. And that's the guy on the ship that's better at steering the ship than anybody else, driving the ship during that whole time. It's a very, very complex evolution. While they're doing this, the helicopters are flying back and forth, dropping more supplies. So there's always 2 helicopters doing a dance to drop more of these pallets. You'll drop a couple 100 pallets during one of these unwraps.
How often?
8 to 10 days.
A couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
I mean, with an aircraft carrier too.
With the aircraft carrier too. And what they'll do is there'll be another ship on the other side of this ship. So there'll actually be 3 ships going through the water. The carrier on one side, one of the other ships from the battle group, and then the supply ship in the middle, and they'll be going both directions.
Holy cow.
So
which ship sets the standard? The middle one?
The middle one.
And then
Everybody pulls up to them. They're the standard.
So you said 12 knots and 10 hours, so you got to have 200 miles of open ocean in front of you. Don't run into an island.
And you don't want any enemy ships, that are going to be in the area. Because if a ship is coming through and they don't pay attention, you've got to break away. You've got to drop all these cables, drop everything, and steer away. Then you've got to remaneuver again and get back together again. Let's watch a video on it. Is that the 5-minute go?
Well, it's complicated, but let's go watch this video.
Naval Expeditionary Forces bring along everything needed to sustain long-term operations. Fuel, food, spare parts, and repairs are all available afloat.